It's recording. Let's do this.
All right. Hello. Welcome to this month's Marketo Deep Dive, the Marketer's Map, a comprehensive guide to strategizing, building, and analyzing Marketo campaigns. I'm Enrico De Leon, four-time Marketo champion, three-time Marketo certified expert, Fearless 50 marketer, and I'm currently the senior manager of marketing operations at Jama Software, and I'll be moderating today's session. As I remember that I need to advance the slides as well. So a few housekeeping slides before we begin. As usual, our user group house rules: no self-promotion or pitching is allowed during the mugs. Do not contact people outside of this user group without their consent. And if members share their use case within the user group, please do not share that information. Remember, mugs should be a safe place, safe space, so don't make it weird. Also, if you somehow missed the on-screen notification, this is a reminder that this session is being recorded. This meeting will be posted on the MUG YouTube channel to promote training, education, and future learning. If you don't wish to participate in this live session, feel free to watch the recording at a later time. We're not going to judge you. And we will be sending information after this session with any pertinent links. Feel free to send any questions you may have regarding these policies to advocacy@adobe.com. And if you haven't done so already, don't forget to stay connected with our chapter. Once you're joined with this chapter, you'll receive notifications about the future events. We also have some exciting events coming up. On Thursday, August 8th, we're having a Marketo Engage skill exchange where you can hear from champions and the team at Adobe on best practices, tips, and real-world experiences, focusing on understanding core features all the way to advanced use cases. Registration is open now. We are also promoting a new learning path, implementing a new Marketo Engage instance aimed at new admins who want to use the self-service model for their onboarding and implementation. The learning path includes new tutorials with step-by-step instructions, with scenarios like managing stakeholder communications, syncing fields with native CRM connectors, and organizing a new instance. And I will put this link right after this. Let's see. Also, don't forget to register for next month's deep dive session on unlocking global marketing with Marketo Engage on Tuesday, August 20th. And in a few days, we will also have the Sydney Mug hosting a hybrid session on working smarter in Marketo on July 25. And later in September, we have the Japan Mug hosting an in-person event on September 27. Again, you can get more information and register for any of these mugs on mugs.marketo.com. All right. So welcome to the Marketer's Map. Throughout the session, feel free to drop any questions in the chat, and we'll address them if time permits. And I've probably talked long enough, so I'd like to introduce today's speakers. First off, we have Alysha, a 2023 Marketo champion, who is the consulting services manager at Atumos, and she's a self-professed campaign ops nerd. Who is it at this point? And of course, we have Max Garrett, another 2023 Marketo champion, who's a senior manager of marketing automation at Western Governors University. And like probably a lot of us here, loves to automate everything. And so without further ado, take it away, Alysha.
All right. Hi, folks. Welcome to our deep dive. And I'm super excited to talk with y'all about everything Marketo campaigns related. So Rico, if you want to go ahead and hit next for me. Well, I was going to say, I'm going to set the stage here for a minute before jumping into the nitty-gritty of our presentation. So let's set the stage. Rico, next. Oh, that's not next at all. That's all of them. All right, here we go. You pour your morning beverage. I'm partial to a cup of coffee myself. You open up your laptop and you have a request from somebody on your marketing team for a campaign to be built in Marketo. We've all been there. It's a very standard request all of us deal with. It could be a one-off. It could be an omni-channel. Just think about the last campaign that you've had to build. And let's talk through what do you do next from here. And the next thing that I'm going to talk about is phase 1, which is planning. And I think all of you are going to pretty easily be like, Alysha, doesn't the marketing team have a plan? Like, isn't that why they have sent us this marketing ops request? And yes, they have a plan. Marketing usually has a plan, and that's why they're running the campaigns they're running. However, and you want to go next slide, the marketing team has a marketing plan. They have KPIs, they have metrics, they have things that they are trying to hit. As a campaign ops builder, you need to have an operational plan on how you are going to tackle the actual campaign build and bring it to life within your MarTech architecture. So let's go next. So step 1 is we are going to dig into the marketing strategy behind the requested campaign. And I recognize that if you're like, they just want an email sent, like, do we really need to do this? And the answer is yes. It's always good to take, even if it is just a minute, to look through your request that you have gotten and make sure you understand what is being requested, why it is being requested, and what folks are trying to achieve. So in order to do that, let's go next slide. These are the kind of questions that you should be asking yourself about the request that you have received, right? So what is the goal? How will it be measured? What tactics and channels are they using? Do we know the audience, how the audience will be identified, and the cadence, the campaign, and the timeline. Now, for a simple campaign, like a one-off email send, these will be fairly easy, right, to identify. It's a webinar invite. The goal is to get registrations. The tactic we're using is we're going to send an email, and the audience is whoever has been defined for the audience invite. But for something like an omni-channel campaign or a larger quarterly campaign, for example, it's going to be really important to understand what the answer to all of these questions is, because operationally, it's going to really matter whether you have, for example, the architecture to measure the goals of the multi-channel, of the omni-channel channel, or like a large quarterly campaign. If there's a specific audience they want to target for the omni-channel or the quarterly campaign, do you have those people in your audience, right? Are we planning a campaign for like 5 people in the database or 500 or 5,000? Those are really important things to know before anything gets built at an operational level. And then in terms of the cadence and the timeline, again, for a one-off email send, this might be pretty easy to deduce of like, yeah, they want to send the email in a week or they want to send the email in a day. We can figure out how to manage it. But for example, if somebody's requesting a nurture to be sent in like a week, it doesn't work like that, right? That it's just not possible to turn around a well-built program operationally in a week. So understanding what the cadence and the timeline of that request is helps you answer what can be done at an operational level at a much more sophisticated way. So we have our marketing strategy, questions that we should be asking. Let's go next. So then, as I just mentioned, we're going to validate this strategy by really digging into these questions and understanding whether our tech stack and architecture can help answer those questions. So let's go next. So I've highlighted here just for you, which ones are the key questions that you're going to want to dig into. And I talked a little bit about this already, so I'm not going to get too far in the weeds of it. But in terms of the audience, understanding who they are in the database and how can they be found, understanding what tactics and channels they want to use to achieve a particular campaign goal. Another example here, for example, is like paid media. If a campaign involves paid media and you've never done paid media before, that's going to be some additional legwork that has to happen before a paid media campaign can be stood up, for example. So then after you have gone through and sort of thought through these questions, tried to operationally validate the marketing strategy, you're going to land in one of two places. And Rico, if you want to go next. We want to arrive at one of two places. So we either want to know that our current tech stack and architecture can execute the strategy, or we want to know that the current state cannot execute the strategy and changes need to be made. Now, let's take a look at some of the examples we've been discussing. An email send, it might be really easy to determine whether you can send that email right or not. That's a pretty easy example of like, yes, we have program templates, we have email templates, the audience makes sense, I can build you an email and turn it around in 3 days. Check, we're good to go, bada bing. But for example, for an omni-channel campaign or a quarterly campaign, maybe they're running paid media ads and the instance has never supported paid media ad tracking before. Maybe there's a nurture included that supports the omni-channel or the quarterly campaign, and it needs new content and we need some more time to develop that many emails. Maybe you guys have never done webinars before and we need to bring in a webinar tool. So landing at that kind of conclusion is also really helpful because it helps you understand that, hey, we cannot do this right now, but as a next step, you can then figure out how to do it. And then I really love this GIF for this slide because it doesn't really matter which of these options you arrive at. Arriving at the right option, whether you can or cannot execute, it's what's really more important, right? Because if you say you execute and you can't, you're going to find yourself in a bit of trouble. And if you say you cannot and you can, that's not as bad, right? But it's often a lot easier to land on the side of like, we need to think through this a little bit more versus just saying yes to everything and then having to backtrack your way into like, JK, couldn't really do that, thought I could, but I couldn't. So Rico, let's go next. So then the campaign strategy, operational strategy, it's all good to go. We can move forward with setting up the campaign in a PM tool. We'll discuss this in a little bit here, but let's go next. If you can't execute the strategy, this is where you're going to have to do a little bit more legwork with your marketing stakeholders. So first, I would outline exactly what changes need to be made, right? Is it new tools? Is it new program templates? Is it new reporting architecture? Whatever that list is. Then determining what the cost of those changes will be. Changes are never free. Work is never free. Because the cost is going to be time. It's going to be dollars if you have to spend money to get a new tool or bring on a contractor to help with something. And then it's going to be reprioritization of existing work, right? There is a finite amount of hours in the day. What will have to give to bring this campaign to life? And then having this really specific details for your stakeholders and then taking it back to them helps you be a really good marketing ops stakeholder and partner for your marketing team, right? Because then you can go back to them with a really concise vision of, hey, if you want to do X, Y is what has to happen. This is the time, the dollars, what has to give. And then you can have a really, specific, useful conversation with the broader marketing team to agree on an executable strategy, right? And an executable strategy can mean a lot of things in this case, right? So maybe it's we move the deadlines out to give room for all this. Maybe we remove components of the campaign that can't be supported right now and plan for it as like a V2 or a V3 or for the next quarterly campaign, right? The goal here is that everyone needs to be on the same page about what can and cannot happen for this campaign and what next steps need to take place in order for the campaign to be launched. So then once everybody's landed on what the executable operational strategy is, we're going to move forward to PM tool setup as well. So then next, Rico. So then, however you got here, we're going to make sure that our requested campaign is in our PM tool and then develop a campaign kickoff if necessary. Next. So a lot of folks do use project management tools. A lot of folks are also taking in requests through Slacks and emails and I guess phone calls, messenger pigeons, I don't know. But if you are running a marketing ops team, you need to have a PM tool to track all of this work, right? And every campaign, every request should have a ticket in there. And ideally for something that's omni-channel or a bigger quarterly campaign, it should have some sort of central hub that can congregate all of the work in one easily accessible place. And then you're going to have sub-tickets, sub-tasks built out for all of the tactics. And again, ideally, we want this all built out in advance so everybody can understand the scope of work that needs to take place. And then if there are changes and updates that need to be made, we have separate tickets in there as well, so we can track that work as well. So the bottom line here, basically, if there is a campaign and there is something that needs to be done, you need to have a ticket for it in your PM tool of choice. Let's go next, Rico. And then scheduling and running a formal kickoff. Your little email send doesn't need this, but for something that's omni-channel, quarterly campaign, for those bigger initiatives, scheduling a formal kickoff can really show that you on the ops side have understood marketing's needs and are being, again, a good partner to them, right? So showing how leads will flow through the campaign, showing off how the campaign will be managed in the PM tool, what reporting the team can expect, the timelines, and any potential risks and mitigation plans that are necessary, right? The marketing team's job is not necessarily to be in the weeds of the operational pieces of it. That's your piece. And a kickoff like this helps show that you have indeed thought through all the odds and ends of this campaign they're trying to launch and make sure that everybody, you know, as like a final dot and check, we're all on the same page about what needs to happen. And I think that is everything that I have to say about phase one, sort of strategizing your campaign. Now I'm going to turn it over to Max to talk through some of the actual build of your campaign.
All right, thank you, Alysha. All right, let's go to the next slide. All right, so before your build, you have received a project management ticket, and you are now responsible for executing on that strategy. What do you do? Let's go to the next slide. Post in the chat if you've ever felt like this guy trying to decode what somebody wants for a marketing strategy into actual campaign execution. I know I've been there several times, and I can't always be, the telepathic guy who can communicate my thoughts. I talk a lot with my hands. So the best thing that I have found that works for all of our stakeholders as well as documentation is, next slide, is diagramming your build. There are so many different ways that you can diagram your build. You can use Illustrator. I'm a personal fan of Lucidchart. You can do it in Microsoft Visio. Google has apps as well. Whatever is going to work for you. I've even seen PowerPoint presentations with shapes built out in PowerPoint. But taking all of the context of those marketing strategies and laying it out into each step of your marketing execution is going to save you time in the long run, because you will have documentation you can share with your stakeholders while explaining each step. And then that will also help you uncover any gaps that might have been missed. The next thing is to define your program success. So Alysha was talking about what are your goals. When you're talking about a single touch point or a portion of a campaign, what is it that you're trying to achieve with that? If you're sending an email, is it a click in the email? Is it visiting a landing page? Is it signing up for a webinar? How can you measure that success by what you do to make sure that everything you're doing is as effective as possible? Make sure that you do define your success there. And then when you are setting up your programs in Marketo, make sure that you're setting up the right channel. This might be something that you have to work with your admins on, but making sure that you have the right channel so that you can track your success using the appropriate channel. So on the right here, you see the documentation that flow, and then this is from the admin section of Marketo, where you can see the channel and all of the statuses associated to that channel. So for a webinar, you go through each one of those, and that success that I'm talking about is at the attended spot. So let's go ahead, next slide. So before you start getting into the weeds and actually building, there's a couple more things you need to do. I would strongly suggest setting up a sandbox or QA environment. This is an option through Marketo where you can have a lower environment, and then you can connect it to your appropriate CRMs. This will really help vetting out ideas or working with different development teams that also work in a lower environment so that you can test proof of concepts out before putting it in your larger environment that might run the risk of sending out emails when you don't actually want to. The next thing is to define your naming syntax. It's going to be so much easier to go back and see what you've done in the past, understand when something's going to go out, what channel it is, what the initiative is, if you have a universal syntax in your Marketo instance where you can easily find everything in there. A good starter option is to do the program imports that we'll talk about from the Marketo library. You can see here that They already have a pre-built naming syntax. Now you don't have to follow this, but it is a good one to start with if you don't have one already. And for the best practices on naming syntax, I have included QR codes through this. So feel free to pull out your phone, scan those, and that will take you to Experiencing with more details. But yeah, making sure that you have a naming syntax that also accommodates your omni-channel experience. Okay, next slide. All right, so you have diagrammed your build. You are ready to get in there and start putting things together. What are your next steps? Let's go to the next slide. It's going to be first to create your programs. And there's three very efficient ways to create your programs. The first is going to be doing a program import. The second is going to be cloning from an internal space in your Marketo instance. And the third would be building from scratch. And we'll talk about each one of those. All right, let's go to the next one. So the first is doing a program import. There's two options for program imports. You can do it from the program library of Marketo. That has a lot of pre-built templates in there. So if you're looking for a webinar program template, that's going to include emails, smart campaigns, reporting, all of the folders and everything organized with that syntax. This is a good way to start, especially if you are new to Marketo. I would highly suggest at least checking out a lot of those program imports in the Marketo program library, just to give you some reference material. The second option, if you do have a sandbox environment, is to import from that environment. Keep in mind, both of these will require you to have the appropriate fields in your instance if you don't already before you can import. So if you are working in a QA environment and you have created a custom field or have synced something that might not be in your production, you're going to have to make sure that that is in both environments before you can bring it in. One of the nice things about using that sandbox environment, though, is if you have created a proof of concept and there's a lot of work that's gone into it, you can bring that whole program into your production environment. And this is really beneficial too for engagement programs. If you're building an advanced engagement program, I would highly suggest try building them out in your lower environment and then promoting them into your production. Next slide. The second is going to be cloning from your own program templates. Now, your day-to-day campaigns, this is probably going to be the most efficient way to do it. The way I like to have everything set up is I have a top-level folder in my workspace that has all of my program templates. They could have already been imported from the program library, and we've vetted for our specific use cases, but they're all set up there with everything that we would possibly need. All we have to do is plug and chug. We put in all of the details in the emails, and then we activate the campaigns. Everything has been linked and referenced appropriately. So you just clone the whole program template, and you're off. This should include your emails, reports, and any smart campaigns in there. So we have a couple of those examples on the right-hand side here that you can see what it would look like. I really like to organize all of my content by campaign and then assets. So I know if I'm looking for a smart campaign, exactly what folder that's going to be, and if I'm looking for an email, what folder that's going to be. Okay, next slide. Option 3 is starting from scratch. This is a really good one if you are also building an engagement program where you might have a bit of a different structure that you would need. One of the things that I would suggest is having solid email templates. If you want to scan this QR code too, it'll take you to the Experience League article on the Marketo email syntax. That is something that you're going to want to have on hand. Every time I build Marketo templates, I still reference this page. That having strong Marketo templates that are editable, that you can have different features, toggle on and off different attributes, Understanding everything that goes into the variables of a Marketo template is going to be great if you're doing things from scratch this way. Something else I'd suggest is if you are not the admin, having your admin disable the Marketo starter templates. This will prevent people in your Marketo environment from using those out-of-the-box templates. Now, don't get me wrong, those out-of-the-box templates are fantastic, but chances are they are not meeting your brand standards. So if you can take those and develop your own Marketo templates off of them, and then just use those Marketo templates, you'll make sure that your brand's team is very happy that you're not using a pink color when you should be using a purple. And then if you do have workspaces, make sure that you are sharing those assets across workspaces. This does have to be on the folder level. You can't share just the individual assets. But anything that you need to share across workspaces, make sure you're doing so as well. All right.
And hey, Max, can I jump in with an aside?
Absolutely.
So you may have noticed out of these 3 options, there is no option that is cloned from a previous campaign. It is tempting.
Okay.
It is so tempting. We have all been there, and I guarantee you, you will get away with it 9 times, and the 10th time it will blow up in your face catastrophically. So please, program templates, import. You will never know what little random thing got left behind from a previous campaign that will come back to bite you. So choose from one of these 3 options. We've all been there, done that. You should find new and more different mistakes to make in your building journey. But please continue, Max.
Yeah, thank you. No, that's perfect. Thank you. All right, we're next going to go to period cost. So you've actually brought in a campaign through one of those options. When you're setting it up, make sure that you are setting your period costs. Period costs are basically the money that you're investing into this campaign, whether it be an email send, a nurture, a whole omni-channel orchestration. It's your general amount for a specific month that's going into this campaign. The reason these are so beneficial is you cannot do ROI reporting without period costs in your program. You can have multiple period costs for a program as well if that campaign is running for several months. But you cannot go back after you have set it up to retroactively add your period costs. Make sure that that is the first thing you do as you're building is setting those period costs. And they don't have to be exact. We like to use just a flat amount to get a general idea. And if that works for you, great. If you want to have those more specific period costs per month, even better. It will allow you to give your stakeholders a ROI and a cost per lead when you're doing acquisition programs. So just keep in mind, you can't go backwards, but you can go forward. If you stop at a certain month and the campaign still goes, everything that you've done up until the month of the most recent or the latest period cost, everything will roll back to that month. So if it keeps going and you've only set it to June, everything will be associated back to June. So keep that in mind when you are setting this period cost. Next slide. All right, you are off to the races. You have set up, your campaign is going. Now, how is it that you're going to manage everything? How are you going to get people in? How are you going to remove people that have qualified or disqualified elsewhere? So let's talk operation programs. Next slide. I'm a personal fan of creating master programs for grouping my engagement programs. I do a lot of work where we're creating parallel information with engagement programs by college. So I like to have everything organized in a master program. This allows me to easily manage when I am adding, removing, or managing somebody for all of those programs. I have a single spot for that. So very similar to my program imports and my templates that I use, I have one for my master programs. This allows me to manage everything there rather than having to go into each program. Now, this may or may not work for your individual programs, but if you are doing a lot of this information where you have similar programs operating, this is a good option to consider. If you are using engagement programs as well, smart campaigns are going to be better for you than transition rules. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with transition rules, but they are a little bit tricky to understand. Transition rules pull people in, where smart campaigns push people to the appropriate section. And you can see the results and the runs of smart campaigns versus transition rules. So for that insight, I would recommend that you migrate and use all of your smart campaigns for your migration versus transition rules in an engagement program.
Max got another aside for folks here. So this sort of master router structure is also really great if you're doing a webinar series, or if you need to push people through even a drip that's not like a formal engagement program. A master router is just a really great way to control who's going where in the different phases of your campaign, right? So I would definitely just think like, I think the engagement program is a great starting point. And then from there, once you wrap your head around what a master router can do for you, think about where else you can deploy that. And then I think executable is a sort of like the next level up of using a master router.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, so executable campaigns and requester campaigns, we'll get to those in just a second. Biggest takeaway from this slide is batch when you can, trigger when you must. Triggers are always on, constantly listening. So if you are struggling with performance in your instance, look at all of the triggers that you have active right now and see what can be reconfigured into a batch campaign. I like to have all of my operational batch campaigns run when I'm not working. They're doing the work and using those resources when I don't need them. So batch when you can, trigger when you must. And then take all of your batches, if you can, run them off hours. Next slide. All right, so Alysha had mentioned it, and we're getting into it now. Executable versus program requested campaigns. These are really good for any lead routing or often reprocessed campaigns or flows that you need to run on a regular basis. So the difference between them, because they do behave very similar, the biggest difference is an executable campaign. As you're going down your flow steps and you request an executable campaign, Marketo will reach out, process that executable campaign first, then bring everything back into your flow versus a program requested, they will run parallel. So if you need to do lead routing or lead scoring or data cleansing, anything like that, and everything that you have in your master flow is going to be contingent upon those details, I'd recommend that you use an executable campaign. If it's something that can run in parallel with the master flow that you have, then use a program requested campaign. Those are going to be your biggest differences. Now, keep in mind too that executable campaigns, you cannot use wait steps or webhooks with them. That's just how it is out of the box. So make sure that everything is timed appropriately. If you do need to put wait steps in your master program before it hits an executable campaign, you can do that, and then you can do a qualification check before it goes on to that. So these are some good options to help also reduce the amount of triggers that you have in your campaigns. Program requested, you can use those if you are using Marketo Sales Insight. You can do a program requested with the specific options for Sales Insight. If your sales team wants to drop somebody in a drip program, great way to do that. If your MOPS team needs to execute something from an external source that may not be directly connected and needs to be called from an API, those are good options for your program requested. So just keep those in mind as you're building of, hey, does this really need to be a trigger, or can we embed this or make it a child executable or program requested campaign? All right, next slide. Next is going to be program expiration. This is really fantastic for things like webinars, when you do have triggers for your confirmation emails and you need to turn them off right after the campaign. You may or may not remember to do it manually, or you want to disable a landing page after a campaign. Setting your local asset expiration on the program level for all of those campaigns will really benefit you in the long run. I've been asked before, well, doesn't Marketo do a cleanup? Yes. Marketo does a cleanup once a quarter for things that haven't run in 6 months. There may or may not be people still going through those campaigns that you don't want to. So setting your program expiration dates on all of your smart campaigns and triggers will benefit you in the long run, because that's a little bit less cleanup that you're going to have to go back and do. So setting this beforehand are really beneficial. All right, next slide. So to recap, before you build, make sure to diagram your journey, define your program success, because that will help lead to your ROI metrics and your reporting down the road. And then have a defined naming syntax when you're putting everything in Marketo to make it easily searchable and understandable where it is, what's happening, when it's going out. During your build, make sure that you've decided how you're going to create your programs. Is that going to be an import? Is that from your local local template library in Marketo, or are you going to be building this from scratch? Select the right channel for your program. If you're using a webinar, make sure you set your webinar channel so that you can track who's registered, who's attended, who's a no-show, and you can provide those reporting metrics back to your stakeholders. Set your period costs. So when you are speaking with your stakeholders and it is a lead generation campaign, you can provide them their cost per new lead metrics. And then leverage your executable or request campaigns for any repeated tasks that you possibly can, whether this is data cleansing, enriching, scoring, what have you. If it is something that you are doing on a regular basis, consider it as an executable or requested campaign. And finally, set your local asset expiration. This is going to make sure that you are keeping your Marketo instance as locked down and process friendly as possible. All right. So we are now going to move on to our next phase of the execution, which is reporting. You've had successful executions. It went off without a hitch. You had good metrics going in, and you knew exactly what you're doing. You built it without any worry. Now, how are you going to report this out? So next slide. The first reports I would introduce you to for you and your stakeholders are going to be the following. Let's go to the next slide. Email performance report and lead performance report. By far, I use more than any other report in Marketo. That's followed by the program performance report and people performance report. But I would absolutely start with your email performance report after every campaign. This is going to show you sends, delivers, clicks, opens, click-through rates, unsubscribes. This is an essential report for you and your stakeholders. It also will help you diagnose if you are having any deliverability challenges. If your deliverability is significantly lower than your sends, then you want to work with your team internally to understand what that is. Is this an email security issue where your SPF or DKIM might be out of whack? Is this your block because of very spammy subject lines, things like that? You can look at that report as well as your soft bounces and hard bounces to understand where you might be able to optimize going forward. Your email link performance report is going to be very handy to understand which links are being clicked in your email. Marketo does an excellent job of creating personalized tokens for every single link that you put in your email. So making sure those are there, that you're tracking all of your emails. Now, a special note on here, if you are using tokens for your email, you need to hard code your HTTP or HTTPS before the actual token itself. The order of operations in Marketo, if you put just a token in there that has a whole link with that HTTPS, you're not going to get your Marketo tracking associated to it, and you'll lose some of those metrics. So what we do is you put in HTTPS in the code, drop in your token. So maybe it's an application token. It starts at that www and goes to the end. But if you have that hard-coded HTTPS in your code, Marketo will recognize that as a link. So when it does get rendered and sent out, you'll have your Marketo tracking tokens on there, and your link performance reports will operate effectively. And then the last I'll say is the engagement stream reports. Those are really fantastic to understand your level of engagement. It will provide you a score, 50 being baseline. Everybody who starts in an engagement stream starts at 50. If it's dropping below 50, that means people aren't engaging with your content. This could be clicks, opens, click-throughs, all of that, scrolls. If people aren't engaging, that gives you an opportunity and a score to understand where to focus your efforts and optimizing your content. So these basic reports are fantastic. Let's go to the next slide.
Can I make what I hope is my final aside of the evening or the day?
Absolutely.
Evening. I also really love exporting reports into Excel and marking them up. I am a big fan of highlighting cells in Excel and also using a pivot. Now I recognize you're definitely gonna have to go Google how to run a pivot table, because I know exactly one way to do it, and that's it. I don't even think it's like entirely the right way. But knowing some basic Excel tricks can also help you really slice and dice your data into a much better understandable way, and to sort of help you find the insights in there, right? So getting these reports out of Marketo, chucking them into Excel, doing some more work over there and spending time can really help up-level your reporting as well. And then that's it, Max. I'll let you take it home from here.
All good. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. You can also set subscriptions for all of your reports so that you do get them on a regular basis. So you're not having to set a calendar reminder to log in and pull those reports. You can actually have them sent to you. So if you haven't done that, do so. It's that last tab. You can also do that in the analytics section, but make sure that you have set up that. All right, advanced reporting. Now, the reason I've asked this is some of these do come with elevated subscriptions in Marketo, so you may or may not have these available to you. If you don't, talk to your account manager about them, because I think that they would be really beneficial for you. I love using all of these reports as well. The first is going to be email insights. If you're like Alysha and I, and you like charts and graphs, and you're like, gee, I wish Marketo had this. Well, in fact, it does. It's the email insights report. Now, quick note on that. It's really going to be beneficial if you have segmentations built up in your database. So using segment and segment data, you can really drill down and cross-reference all of the information on a report using that information. Now, you can pull individual emails and email campaigns in there, but if you wanted to cross-segment your audience or information, using segmentation is really going to be beneficial. Once you have a report that you've really drilled down and is exactly how you need, like a month over month, and have all your timeframes, save it as a quick report. On the top right-hand side of where you see the graph, there's going to be a little share icon. You can save it to your quick reports, and then you can jump back into Marketo, pull that report anytime you need. The next is your performance insights report. This is going to be a fantastic report for any omni-channel mix modeling that you are doing and how everything's working in your effective metrics there. Opportunity Analyzer. This does also require that you have Revenue Cycle Modeler built and you've set everything up, but this will show how people are flowing through each one of your stages. So those are really good ones. Success Path Analyzer, that's how everyone's flowing through your stages. Opportunity Analyzer, that's going to provide you any sort of contributions along the way. So these advanced reports are fantastic. You can find them in your analytics section of Marketo. If they're not there, talk to your account manager. It might be time for you to see if you can upgrade that Marketo instance to really make those stakeholders happy. All right, and that is it. We are gonna turn the rest of the time over to questions. I've talked a lot, so we want to hear from you.
And hang on, let me stop the recording. We do have a few questions, so maybe.